When you step into the danger zone, you don't stop listening. It's Let's Find Out with Diego. Step into it. Ooh, yeah! Are you curious about the unknown, the unexplainable? Do you find yourself intrigued by the mysterious and paranormal side of our world? Join us on an adventure into the world of inexplicable discoveries and investigations that may someday give us the final answer as to what may be behind the veil of reality. The borders of space and time have opened once again, and transmitting from the mountains of West Virginia, it's time once again for Let's Find Out with Diego. The universe is waiting for you.
On this episode of Let's Find Out, Howling Underdog Films is an innovative independent producer of documentaries, delving into the depths of the world's histories and mysteries. Their latest creation, Neighborhood Skywatch, boldly embarks on a journey with a determined group seeking extraterrestrial encounters under the vast night sky. This compelling documentary sparks intrigue and wonder as we learn that something answered. All this plus more. Please welcome back our good friend from Howling Underdog Films. My friend, welcome back to Let's Find Out. My friend, it's been so long. The last time I had you on, you were one of the original guests back on episode 3 in January of 2023. Here we are, 2025. Thank you for coming back, my friend.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been a while and quite a bit has happened since then, so we got some things to catch up on.
Yeah, because now we're 4 docs deep, and it all started, well, back in the day. You just finished, and I always butcher this name, so I've heard it said so many times. When I first mentioned, I say Judacula. I'm like, this sounds stupid. It sounds like I said Dracula, which is not the way it's said. And I've heard Judacula, and then you later release Habitats. Um, for the listeners that may have missed that episode, let's go over these one more time. But can you help me? How do you say that? Is it Judacula? Am I even close?
Okay, so I'm gonna say it the way I've heard it the most. So, and I've encountered the Judacula before. A lot of people have a hard time saying it, but the way I've always heard it pronounced is Judacola.
I mean, it sounds a lot better than what I said. That's for sure. So while we're on that subject, and like I said, a lot has changed since then. You switched gears a little bit, but let's go over these first two documentaries, if you don't mind. Let's go over the first one. What was that one about?
Sure. So the first one was Judacola, Legend of the Devil's Courthouse. And really it started with I like hiking. I like being out in the woods and nature. It's a peaceful place for me. It's my comfort zone. It's where I go to recharge my batteries and all that. So I had been doing hikes and traveling to different places, just looking into different things that made me curious and got me interested. So for as long as I can remember, I've been interested in Bigfoot and UFOs and so on and so forth. So I figured it would be adventure with purpose, I suppose. So, and I mean, it's more of a mental health thing for me. It's a way to relax and unwind and do something fun for myself. Even if nothing happens, you still have, the serenity of these places. And it's very healing. So, I mean, that in itself is worth it for that. But I've always been interested in cameras, so I'm always taking pictures, videos, so on and so forth. And I got to thinking, well, I mean, I have all this footage from all these places. I mean, it wouldn't be too hard to cut it together as a documentary. So I got a hold of a fellow by the name of Jim Charnesky. He's with the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization, and I met him several years ago. and he gave me his business card, so I had all of his contact information. I got a hold of him, told him what I'd been up to, what my plan was, and asked him if he'd be willing to sit down and talk with me, and he was very willing to do so. And I mean that's pretty much it. I started editing it together. Took a couple of months on that and put it out just for fun to see if anything would happen, and it seemed to do pretty well. I'm very happy with the way it turned out. Um, and after that, I mean, I wanted to go a little further with it and see uh, what else I could do, and if anything else could be found. So I figured it would be a fun idea to do a sequel. So that's where Habitats: A Mountain Adventure came along, and is me and some friends investigating different reports in the Southern Appalachians. We got a hold of Scott Tompkins from the Bigfoot Mapping Project and spoke with him. Did an interview with him. He told us all about the map and the app that he has going, all the work that he's been doing with it. A super nice guy. Um, and the Bigfoot Mapping Project app was very, very cool because I mean it shows you all the sightings in the area. It shows you the recent ones, what if it's a vocalization, a footprint, or a sighting. I mean it's a very useful tool for anyone who's wanting to go and research into this stuff. So that was a lot of fun. Um, we got to meet Daniel Benoit. He was also a very wonderful guy. Got to sit in and listen to him give one of his lectures. Um, we had some witnesses. Matt Sieber, he was from Eastern Tennessee, Bigfoot. He was willing to sit down with us and talk a few things. He brought up mind speak and kind of the more paranormal aspects of Bigfoot, which I thought was really interesting. That was one of the areas that I kind of wanted to look into going into that. Because I mean, I think anytime you're doing something like this, it doesn't matter whether you believe in a certain aspect of it or not. It's not important. To me, it's more important to keep an open mind, and whether you believe it or not, take that information and file it away in the back of your mind just in case something comes up later. Then you have a reference point.
And during the time that you were making these documentaries, let's go back in time to before you were doing these things. How did you get interested in the subject of cryptids like Bigfoot or anything like that? Have you? Well, let me go back. Have you had any personal experiences or know somebody that has had them?
I've known several people who have had experiences. I used to live with a friend. She was telling me she was on her way home one night. She was working a late shift, and she was on her way home, and the road that she had to take was kind of out in the middle of nowhere. And she saw something standing on the side of the road, and it kind of stepped out in front of her, and she stopped. She didn't want to hit it, and she said it come up to her car and kind of looked into her window, and when she had a clear exit, she took off. But I mean, I've heard several stories like that. When I was a teenager, I heard something screaming up on top of the mountain ridge. Never did see anything, never did find anything to um, confirm or deny what it was. It was just a weird, unusual sound that kind of stuck with me. And whether or not that's what it was or not, it was still something that got me deeply interested in the subject, because whether or not that's what it was, people are still seeing something, and I would like to know what it is, kind of thing. So it's always been something that's made me curious. Like I mean, I can remember watching Legend of Boggy Creek when I was a kid. And it opens up, with those big bold letters. This is a true story, and and goes from there. And little kid me is sitting there watching this and just eating it all up. So, I mean, even back then, I can remember watching that movie thinking, I don't want to go do this. Not thinking about the fact that it might eat you, but I want to go do it.
Well, I mean, there's a certain element of danger to whatever it is that you're looking for, whether it's Bigfoot, extraterrestrials, or even to the paranormal field. Now, going back to that unusual sound or noise that you heard, was it a high pitched sound? Was it the classic? I would say like I wouldn't say a monster sound, but what you know how people describe Bigfoot as sounding? Was it like the chatter? Was it like a growl or a whoop? Anything like that?
No, it wasn't the chatter. It was more the howl. I'm not going to say the Ohio howl because that's not exactly right because the Ohio howl was a little too low in pitch. This seemed like it went a little bit higher. I mean, the area that it was coming from, it was pretty far away. So I mean, whatever was making that sound, I mean, it had to have been big enough to carry that sound from as far as it was. Um, but there's okay, so several years ago, I do not remember the name of the video or who posted it, but this was one of the closest sounds I found that matched it. Uh, it was this couple that was broken down on the side of the road. I believe they might have been in an 18-wheeler, maybe. And they got a camera and they're just recording the sound that's coming from the woods, near where they're at. That's probably one of the closest recordings I've come across to what I heard.
Wow. And so when you heard that, in your mind, it's like that validates your experience. So I guess you built on that.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to say it validated anything, but it definitely put a very strong maybe in my mind. So it opened me up to the possibility.
And that's fair enough because sometimes we can experience things or hear things may not necessarily be what we think it is, but it does help us to at least do more research and go out there and try to see if we can find these things, right?
Right. It's something that I'm curious about and I want to know more of.
And then, well, interesting enough, so that want to know more about certain things, you kind of made a little bit of a shift because you went a little bit outside of, I would say, your boundaries, and now we're talking about neighborhood Skywatch, much different than the projects you were working on. So let's talk about why the shift from cryptids, and now we're talking about extraterrestrials.
Yeah, okay, this is where it's going to get fun. So, while I was in the middle of making habitats, I started. I'm. I mean, I listen to a lot of podcasts and things like that. Anyway, so one of the things I've always been interested in is UFOs. So, I mean, ever since the whole thing came out in 2017, they are real. We've been lying to you the whole time. So, ever since that came out, there's been more kind of a slow trickle of information coming out since then. And one of the things that I come across was Stephen Greer. Now, I first found out about him with his documentary Unacknowledged, where he's talking about, the cover up and the black budget programs and so on and so forth. And then he had Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind that came out. And that was the one that really got me interested because that is the one where he's discussing like human initiated contact with extraterrestrial beings. So, I mean, it sounds crazy. I know. I don't care. Um, so the more I looked into it, the more I thought, okay, well, maybe. I mean, I wasn't willing to completely dismiss it. So some time had passed, and I discovered that there was a group. There are many groups, all throughout the country, all throughout the world, that get together and do what is called CE5, which is Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, and it's these protocols that you do in order to establish contact. So I figured, okay, I'm just going to go sit in on one and see what happens. I mean, if nothing happens, then it's just a misadventure, meet some people, create a memory and move on. That's not what happened. So the literally the first night. I mean, we go in. It's hosted by this gentleman. His name is Mark Hagerling. Also, very nice guy. I've worked with him very closely on this. He's been a huge help. I don't think I could have done it without him. Um, but we kind of meet inside in the building, and he kind of gives you a rundown of what's going on. This is what we're going to be doing. This, and this could possibly happen, so just kind of be aware of that. So, I mean, and eventually, once it got dark enough, we went outside and started setting up. And sure enough, once we got going, there were people over to my left saying, hey, I just saw a flash, coming from the north, about, in so and so this area. Not too long after that, there was somebody else, hey, I saw another one. And about three people saw this. So at this point, I got the camera just pointing straight up in the direction they're saying that it's coming from. I mean, that's all I know to do. And I'm looking through the viewfinder, and I see this very bright object moving very fast, zip across the screen, moving from right to left. And it's like a glowing ball of light. And it is very, very close. I mean, less than 50 feet away. It was incredibly close. Uh, I One of the guys who saw it was sitting a couple chairs down from me. He actually he said it flashed like directly into his eye. So he he said he had like a little black spot in his vision after that. And I've spoken to him since then. He's fine now. I mean, he wasn't feeling any pain or anything from it. He said within 10 minutes everything was fine. He was back to normal. But there was just so many things that happened and added up. So the on the second night we went, it was raining, so we had to stay inside, and we still did the thing, but we still had things happening inside because we all had, different gadgets here and there that started going off and acting up, and it was so much more than I ever thought it was going to be.
And so this would be your first time even experiencing something like this.
Well, okay, so it's not my first time seeing something. That was my first time uh, calling it in, more or less. So, like I've seen things like this multiple times throughout my life. I'll give you one example. This was 2020, I believe. I was staying at a friend's house, and when she bought this place, she told me right off the bat, like, dude, this place is haunted. Like there is so much stuff that goes on here. So I mean, me being me, I've know been getting updates from her, and eventually I moved in there for a little while, and she told me, like, before I even walked in the door, she said, "Look, things are going to happen here. You are going to see things. You are going to experience things. Don't freak out." So, and one of the things that she said was seen was like these balls of light. She called them fairy lights, and they would be, floating out through the trees and stuff. So one evening, it wasn't long after I moved in there. It was within the first week. We were sitting outside on the front porch. It was the two of us and her husband, and we're just, shooting the breeze, just normal conversations, and complaining about work and so on and so forth. And it's not dark yet. It's kind of dusky. So in the front yard, there's like the driveway, and then there's like this big open field that's probably, I don't know, 60, 70 yards. And then there's a tree line. So at the tree line, there was this blue ball of light that I hadn't noticed before. And I saw that it was moving. Okay, so I'm going through my mind different things that it could be. Okay, could it be somebody out walking around with a flashlight? Okay, so you know how when somebody's walking over uneven ground, with a light or something, it'll be kind of bouncy and uneven as
Yeah.
they go over the ground. Okay, that's not what was happening here. This was very smooth, very gliding. Okay, so okay, could it be a drone? Could be a drone. Um, I don't know if I'd want to fly one through those trees like that, because I mean it's kind of grown up through there. But I mean, to each their own. But two more showed up, same size, same color, that kind of light, kind of flickery, almost like a plasma ball blue. And they floated over and they joined the other one and they formed like an upside down equilateral triangle shape. And while this is going on, I'm shaking my friend and pointing. I was like, "Is that it? Is that what you're talking about?" And she said, "Yeah, that's it." And they hung around for a couple of seconds, and then all three faded out in unison.
Wow. And that's something that was continually going on in on that property, right?
Yes. And it goes through phases. Like I spoke to her probably a couple weeks ago and asked if anything had been going on recently, and she said, It's been kind of quiet lately, but every once in a while she'll text me and say, this happened, or I saw something, or something moved, hat flew off the counter or something." So
Man,
I am keeping in touch with her. I do want to go over there one night and just set up and see if I can catch anything on camera. The last time I was over there and actually living there, I tried. I tried for well over a year and wasn't able to. But I know a little more now than I did back then, so I'd like to try it again with, you know, the equipment and the knowledge that I've gained, and just try it again.
what's the history of that property and that home? Were you ever able to do some research? Did the owners know more about it? What was going on with it?
She would be the better one to ask about that than me. I know she's looked into it and she's talked to me about it before, but as far as recalling any details, I don't have any for you at present. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. I mean, I figured you lived through it, you saw it, so I think that in itself speaks volumes of what's going on that property. And prior to that, growing up, I'm gonna go ahead and ask: was there more paranormal experiences, or is this something that happened when you got older?
I know that there's been things like throughout my life. I've seen lights in the sky before. I've seen the three that I told you about. Probably the most dramatic one that I ever had. I was probably in my early 20s when this happened. Um, I woke up from a dead sleep, just middle of the night, and there is this beach ball size ball of white light hovering right in front of me, like maybe a foot and a half away. And I know I wasn't dreaming this because when I woke up and I saw it, it startled me. And when it startled me, I immediately put my hands down, started pushing backwards, and I pushed all the way back until my head was hitting the wall behind me. So at that point, I was wide awake. I know I was wide awake, and it was still there, and I was looking at it. No interaction or anything. It just kind of hovered there for a few seconds and then faded out, just like the other ones I was telling you about.
Wow. And the first thing I thought about once you saw that object is sleep paralysis, but you were able to move. So you didn't feel any force keeping you down or anything.
No, but I have had sleep paralysis twice. That freaked me out pretty good. It didn't last long. It was less than a minute, but I woke up and the only thing I was able to do was move my eyes, and that was it. Nothing else.
Yeah, it sounds pretty much almost like my experience. I've had experiences only twice in my life. The first one is I'm almost immobile. I can only move my head back and forth. The other one, I flopped around a little bit like a fish out of water, but it was the force was so powerful. I really could really do much other than kind of just look like like I said, like a fish out of water there, flopping around.
Yeah, I mean, there's not really a whole lot you can do. I mean, it scared me because I mean, I wake up and I cannot move anything. The only thing I can do is look around, and that's it. And I'm trying. I'm trying with everything I got. And when the movement did come back, it all came back at once, and it was fine. And it happened again, maybe about a year later, and that was the only times that ever happened.
Yeah, I what I love researching and knowing about these things, those two experiences I had, I don't think I really care to have them again. To tell you the truth.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to either. I have a reference point. I know what it's like. I don't need any more. We can move on.
No, fantastic. Same way I feel about that. And now what we're going back to neighborhood Skywatch because you had the first documentary and now there's a part two. Now with the part two, was this part of the same group during the same event or are these different occasions?
Okay, it's the same group, but it's a different occasion. The big thing that happens in that one took place in November. So what my goal was with this is I wanted to be as scientific about it as possible. So I wanted to try to follow the scientific method. So and the final step of the scientific method is retest it, see if you get the same results, see if you get a different result. So I wanted to retest it and see if it happened again. And you'll just have to see what happens.
No, I don't want to give any spoilers. I just have all these questions and I'm not going to ask these questions in case the listeners of Let's Find Out haven't seen the documentary yet. And I'm going to watch it again. And during when I've watched something the second time, that's when I start looking for these details, right? Kind of like when you watch a movie several times, you start seeing all these Easter eggs pop up. You're like, oh, I didn't notice that before. So let me ask you this, my friend, because now that you've had the experiences and been around the people who've had these experiences, what is your best guess? What is your opinion of what it is that these UFOs want from us when they make contact? Um, some say that they're here to help us. Some say they're here to do the exact opposite. But in your opinion, what do they want? What is this message you're sending?
Okay, so now, like you said, this is my opinion based on my experience. So the experiences I've had have been startling because they wasn't really expected. Like even on the one I got on camera, when it happens, you can hear me go and kind of gasp as it happens. But in none of these instances did I ever feel like I was threatened, like it meant me harm. I never got that impression from any of these. And the way I look at it is if they were here for nefarious purposes, if they were here to do us harm, why are we alive and fine? I mean, we if they wanted to hurt us in any way, it could have very easily, and with the speed that it was moving, it would have been over before we even knew what happened. It was almost like you know we extended the invitation and it accepted it and it showed up to say, okay, here I am, hi, how's it going. I don't think they're a threat. I really don't. um at least, not all of them. I mean, I'm sure there's probably, other species that don't like us as much, but the ones that are here that are interacting with people at these events. I mean, talk to anybody who's gone to a CE5 event and had an experience, and I've yet to hear anybody who's had a negative encounter. It's always been very peaceful, very loving, and very helpful. Like there's a lady that I interviewed for part two. Uh, she has a very incredible story about them doing something to help her out. And that's absolutely incredible. And I don't, I cannot find, anything so far that suggests, that this is anything negative. I think this is something positive. I think it's something, good for humanity, but it's to help, raise the collective consciousness of everybody and just get us on the level where we are supposed to be instead of, struggling more or less.
Sure. And with these extraterrestrials, because there's been cases where, and the stories that people have told that they've came out more of a not so great at the end of it. I think they found it kind of traumatic to say the least. But those are very few cases. And with these extraterrestrials, in your opinion, are they truly coming from outer space? Is it an interdimensional thing, or are they just living here on Earth and we just can't see them?
In my opinion, probably a little all of the above. Um, I definitely think there are other beings that exist on other planets. Um, and like even in the hearing, you heard David Grush mention interdimensional beings being a possibility. Um, I'm I'm totally open to that. Um, as far as things being on Earth, I definitely think that they are here now, that they have been here for a long time. Um, and as far as people having the negative experiences, I mean, again, I don't really have any reference point on that because I've yet to experience anything negative. I'm not saying, the people who did have, negative experiences, I'm not, trying to downplay that at all. Um, like if they say, this and this happened, I mean, you know, I do think, they did experience something, but as far as exactly what they experienced, I really don't know because I mean, you hear about, these programs having, their own crafts that have been reverse engineered, and they're identical to the real thing. It's they're uh, it's hard to tell them apart. So I mean, it's once you get into that area, it's kind of hard to kind of decipher things.
And I can understand that with talk about the reverse engineering, basically just by just cloning technology. It could have just been somebody somewhere that we'll just say mimic the technology and just use it for nefarious reasons. It wasn't necessarily the extraterrestrials themselves.
Right.
And I can see that because I mean, even the history of humanity, there's been plenty of times where that's happened, where people call a false flag or using acts of deceit in order to start wars. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
So going back to when you were meeting with a lot of the folks there in this group, those two different events, can you recall one story, and you don't have to mention their name, that kind of shocked you with what kind of experience they've had?
I'm not gonna say that it shocked me, but I did think it was really interesting because it did come up later. So, Mark, the organizer, he was in kind of the pre-meeting. He was sitting around telling about sometimes people will hear things during a session, but they'll only hear it in like one ear and so on and so forth, and they'll start electronics will start kind of acting up. Okay, well, so while he was saying all this, okay, so I had two cameras set up. I had I've got a Panasonic Lumix. I had it set up on a tripod for one angle, and then I didn't have my other camera with me, so I was just using a cell phone as a backup camera for a secondary angle. So I had it set up, and when I go back later to review the footage and do the edit and everything, I noticed that the audio that come from the cell phone had only recorded on one channel. It only recorded on the left channel. The right channel was completely dead air. So as the night progressed, I was still using the phone as the secondary camera. And as we get into the meditation and everything, the audio, when I listened to it, it became very garbled. Uh, like it was getting heavy interference from something. A couple of times it sounded like the audio would slow down and then it would speed back up, like somebody would be talking and it would be slow and then pick back up. And it was just weird things like that. And it went on for the rest of the night. And to this day, this cell phone still does not work right from that.
So maybe some sort of damage from whatever it picked up. You know, who knows, right? Because
Maybe.
sometimes electronic devices can get power can be drained. They just stop working at all.
We also had something else happen that second night. Um, and again, the second night, it was actually raining outside, so we wasn't able to go out and do things like we normally do. But we still did the meditation, everything inside. But we all had different gadgets and so on and so forth set up. So like a couple people had EMF meters, and one person had a radar detector, which this was new to me. I hadn't really thought of that. But there is something called the Orion transmissions, and I found this out later. And what this was, it was an event that was hosted by Dr. Greer, I believe, and somebody had a radar detector, and while he was going through and guiding the session, he was holding, I think it was a rose quartz, I think, and he was just kind of holding it up, and he was pointing it toward Orion, and as he did that, the radar detector started going off. and then he would turn away from it, and it would kind of slow down or stop, and then he'd turn back toward it and then pick up again. So we had something very similar happening that night. We just didn't have the crystal or anything.
That's very interesting. I think that's the first time I've heard of somebody using a radar detector for anything.
Yeah, that was definitely a new one for me.
They still sell those?
Yeah, I actually got a hold of the manufacturer and sent them a clip of what it was doing and asked them some questions to get their opinions on what was going on. And that is in the documentary, by the way.
Oh, awesome! Because I remember radar detectors were very big in the '80s and early '90s, and I think once the phones and Google got together, I think now Google Maps tells you where they're hiding.
Yeah, but they are still manufacturing them.
Excellent. And I don't know what states they're legal or not, but whatever y'all want to use, that's your business. I'm not going to say who's using it, but now you just finished. You just finished editing part two, correct?
I'm not finished yet. I've got a couple of things I need to do, and I'm going to send it out to everybody and let them look at it and make sure they don't have anything else that they want to add. But it's pretty close. The goal that I have in mind is I would like to have it out by April 6th because that's the 1 year anniversary of the night that we caught that. So I figured that would be a good time to have it out.
Yeah, I mean, that's not too far away, my friend.
I think I can make it.
Oh, I know you will. You put out some awesome things, and
Thank you.
always the question is, and I know people they finish their projects, they're done with it. Oh, people always ask what's next. So I'm gonna be that people. I'm gonna ask you about what's next in your interests. Are we gonna continue down the extraterrestrial highway? Or would it go back to cryptids? Or are you gonna take a good long break?
Um, there'll probably be a short break, but not too long. Uh, because I like to have some kind of project, have some kind of goal to be working toward. After Skywatch 2, there's I'm actually going to be editing something for somebody else. There's a gentleman by the name of Robert Florio. I got in touch with him from somebody from the C5 group. He apparently has quite a story to tell, a lot of footage, and he's looking for an editor. So hopefully, sometime this weekend, I can get some of his footage and get started on that. Not sure when that'll be ready, but that'll be the next thing I end up doing.
Now, for the listeners of Let's Find Out that they want to learn more about your documentaries, and especially now with Neighborhood Skywatch and then two coming out in the near future, where can they go find out and on what platforms do you have it on?
YouTube is the best place. That's where you can find the full versions of everything. I'm not really active on social media all that much. I do have a TikTok account that I post to every now and then, and that's mainly because that's where I've been getting the most interaction from people. So I've just been sticking with that, and it's both Howling Underdog Films.
And you're doing awesome things, man. I really appreciate you coming back on the show. And I also, on the pre-interview we're talking about, I really appreciate you giving me a chance when I first started. You didn't know me from Adam, but I mean, you gave me that chance, and then I had you on, and just great stuff. And I really appreciate you helping the show become so successful as it is now.
Well, the thanks goes both ways because you invited me on, contacted me out of the blue. You didn't know me either, and you gave me the chance as well. So I want to return that thank you.
Awesome, my brother. And I look forward to having you back on later this year because I think that you're going to probably surprise us with something you're not telling me about. But I want to break it here first, if you don't mind.
I actually have a couple other documentaries. One is out called "Isolated Incident: The Blue Ridge or the Parkway Plane Crash." And it's actually about a plane that crashed in the 1980s. And a friend of mine went up there and actually found the crash site and documented everything. It's gone now. The Park Service actually had the plane removed, so we were actually some of the last people to go in there and see it before everything was taken out. Um, and I also have one that I forgot about. I have like a really, really short, like 8-9 minute kind of haunted history type little short mini documentary about a haunted bridge coming up on March 1st, and that's called Bridge of Souls.
Man, you're unstoppable. I knew there was something going on there, man. So we'll look forward to that. And then, hold on. I was going to end the show. I'm curious about this plane crash, if you don't mind me asking.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the plane crash was there all this time. You
Yes.
were one of the last to see it, and then they just removed it. Why did it take so long?
I really don't know why it took so long. I know for quite a while, once people found out it was there, it almost became like a little tourist attraction. Because I remember when we went to the location, uh, one of the first things we did, they had like a little, building set up with, like, bathrooms, gift shop, snacks, whatever. So those a gentleman working in there, and I walked in there and asked him, if he could point me in the direction, where the plane is. And when I asked him, I could tell he really, really, really didn't want to tell me. He did anyway, but he let it be known that they really didn't like people going there, because it is a dangerous trip to get to. Like, we both fell a couple times, didn't get hurt or anything, but I mean, there were spots on that trail. If we'd fell there, it would have had a much different ending. So I mean, I can see why they didn't want people going, and I guess they just got tired of all the risk and everything, and had it flown out with a helicopter.
Yeah, it's one of those kind of like when them rock climbers get stuck somewhere or somebody goes
Yeah.
out. Yeah, yeah, it's kind of dangerous, but if you have some sort of good survival skills and good balance, I guess you could survive anything. So,
Well, I don't have the good balance.
oh well, yeah, of course, I understand that. I wouldn't either. I'll feel safer just watching the film that you're making on that one, man. So perfect. So I love everything that you're doing, and let's do this again later this year.
Absolutely. Sounds good.
Thank you, my friend.
The debut book by Diego the Podcaster, I Remember the Crib, delves into one man's extraordinary encounters with the strange and paranormal. Diego the Podcaster takes readers on a journey through a collection of short real-life stories that unveil his untold experiences. Diego offers a unique glimpse into a life filled with inexplicable events that have remained a secret until now. The readers are invited to explore the mysteries and wonders that have shaped Diego's existence, that gave birth to his podcast, Let's Find Out with Diego. Available now on Amazon Kindle. Published by Zombie Media.
Let's find out with Diego! The power of Diego madness! Ooh, yeah! All content for Let's Find Out is property of co-host Diego and is served directly from our servers with no modification, redirects, or rehosting. All celebrity impersonators are paid performers. The impersonated celebrities do not endorse or promote any views or opinions expressed by our guests, co-host Diego, or Let's Find Out. The information shared on Let's Find Out is provided on an as-is basis, with no guarantees of completeness, accuracy, usefulness, or timeliness.